But as everyone who has taught what some places call foundation courses, some people call general ed, others generically refer to as civ, courses in Western civilization, as everyone who's taught any of these knows all too well, there's a severe risk in such courses of inducing intellectual indigestion at best and superficiality at worst. If you simply rush into Aladdin's cave and grab without thinking, you're not likely to learn anything other than how to compile a bibliography. Pedagogically speaking, I am a devout skeptic about the existence of any such thing as the Platonic ideal syllabus in Civ. I don't mean I'm a skeptic about the value of trying and failing, and indeed about the value of trying harder and failing better. Nonetheless, the Platonic ideal seems to me to be elusive and to remain elusive. On the one hand, there is the view that we should start with one really difficult, long book and engage in total immersion, and that when students have mastered that one really difficult, long book, they will then know how to master anything they are given. But what is it? What is that one book? Plato's Republic? Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain? Newton's Principia? You can make a case for any number of books, so long as you can be sure that the reader, who after all is in her first semester, that the reader will bring to this one book all the knowledge that we hope she is going to get out of it at the end of this process. One book of this kind tends to be what one comes to at the end of one's life and says, this is my book. Starting off at the beginning, one needs a great deal of help. On the other side, there is the supermarket vision, where the student is given a trolley and sent off to pick from the shelves. What do the shelves contain? Anthologies, full of the best bits of everyone, from Aeschylus at one end to Philip Roth at the other. And this also is fine, but it's fine if you start with a clear view of the whole supermarket and you know whereabouts the snippets you are given fit into the larger works from which they are snipped, and where the larger works fit into the history of their genre, where they fit into the intellectual and literary tradition, how they match and do not match their readers' expectations. In other words, you can be let loose in the supermarket only if you really know how to put together the shopping when you've done it. Somewhere between these two models, there is what we all actually try to do. Enough of a conspectus so people have an idea where things fit, enough concentration on some 1, 2, 3 major works so they get an idea of what it's like to really subject yourself to the ideas of a serious thinker. The idea being that you have both a map and you have the equipment to engage with the major monuments in such a way as to allow the major monuments to make their full demands of you. This sounds thus far as though we're going to be concentrating on literary, philosophical, historical works, but I don't want to suggest that. The history of the human exploration of the world is, after all, the exploration of the world, not just of our own psyches. Science is an important component of any liberal education. Mill, when addressing St Andrews, had already encountered Huxley's claim that the world had changed, it was time to educate people in science, not literature. Mill asked the serious, obvious question, why not both? And of course, the answer is, of course, both. And of course, one should also remember that not all encounters with the world are explanatory or exploratory in that sense. Some are celebratory as well. So the fine arts and their history, clearly one of the components. We are, after all, trying to cultivate the whole person. Commentators complained at the time, and ever since, that Mill's suggestions about what a university education might look like when he made them at St Andrews would make an excellent degree course if, but only if, students were allowed to take something like 20 years over the programme. And that, I think, is almost, but not quite, a fair point. The retort, and in fact it was Mill's own retort, is that one thing you find out when you enter Aladdin's cave is that it goes on forever. You never get to the far end. The further you go, the bigger it gets. It's quite an unusual kind of cave. And the further you get, the more interesting the contents become. All you can ask of a college education is that it sharpens your senses, sharpens your critical faculties, so that as you go on, you can go on exploring more and more and more forever. That it is an enabler. The one thing I fear I may have given the impression of with all this talk of caves and supermarkets is that the cave, like the supermarket, has everything neatly stacked up, waiting to be enjoyed. And in some ways I think this is true, but it gives the impression that engaging with it is something of a passive experience. And that can hardly be what I need to say if I'm trying to say that this is all about intellectual liberation. So now comes the qualification. The cave won't illuminate its contents unless you illuminate them for yourself. And it's not at all easy to shine the right kind of light on its contents. You need two things that don't easily run in harness. The first is a great deal of intellectual self-confidence. You need somewhere deep down to believe that, let us say, Thomas Hobbes was waiting for you to read Leviathan, that you are the reader that Thomas Mann was waiting for, that you are the audience that Aeschylus wrote his plays for, that you really are entitled to these things, and indeed that they are there for you. Without that confidence, it's very hard, I think,